Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm an artist and I make lots of videos on the creation of art, but today's a little bit different as I have an art haul. So I actually only went into this needing to stock up on printer inks, but you know how it goes, I got a few extra bits. So the first item was some printer inks. I do go through them a lot, so every now and then I do need to stock up on them. In the next box I have some clear spray sealant, and I'm thinking I'm going to use this on some wooden panels before the gesso, because I have had some problems with the wood absorbing the acrylic too much, so I'm going to try that out and hopefully that works. That was actually suggested by one of you guys, so thank you to the person that commented that, and I will let you guys know in a future video if it works or not. So in the next box we have a couple more bits. Some of you guys might even recognise that pink box, as there's been a lot of hype around the art supply. But before we get into that, we have a couple more printer inks for my printer. I know they're not the most interesting art supplies, so I'm not going to start talking about them. So if you haven't seen these before, these are the Artex acrylic markers. I've been seeing these a ton on YouTube, so I've finally decided to get some and try them out myself. I will swatch these out in a little bit and let you guys know what my first impressions are. So now we have the final box. This box was from Cassart and I got quite a few bits from them, but let's start with the canvases. So all of the canvases I got are Cassart's own brand, and I already have some thoughts on them. So I got a few oval canvases as I've been enjoying working on that shape lately, but keep an eye on the edges of the canvas. I have an image on screen of a Arrtx oval canvas, which is the brand I've been using lately. As you can see, the edges are smooth, whereas the edges on the Cassart ones have ripples going all the way around the canvas. I'm still going to use them, they're going to be perfectly fine for making some videos with, but it's definitely something I will remember for the future. So I have a few sizes including a circle canvas as well. I'm not sure how well these will perform, but I'll be sure to let you know in a future video when I end up using them. And then we have a few blending stamps as I was running a bit low on them. But back to the canvases, I also got some rectangle and square ones, and these looked much better. The edges looked good and the corners were folded nicely, so I'm not as worried for these ones. Plus, I thought the price on these were really good. Next we have some paintbrushes. I only got a few select brushes, all for different needs, but the first one we have is an Acrylic paintbrush, which are the brushes I use for watercolour. They are the best watercolour brushes I have used, so I can highly recommend them. This is a number 1 liner, which I got because I found myself needing something smaller when painting with watercolour. Then we have a mop brush, which I will be using for acrylics. I got this because I have been using my watercolour mop brush for blending acrylics, and although I clean my brushes well, I don't want to risk ruining my watercolour brush. So now I have one for watercolour and one for acrylics. The last two brushes I will also be using for acrylics, but these are rake brushes. I've never tried rake brushes before, but I've seen lots of artists use them, so I wanted to see what they were like. I can see them being really good for blocking in fur. Now this last art supply I've been wanting to try out for a very long time. I've only painted with oil paints once or twice and could never stick with them because of the drying time, the cleanup, and all the crap you needed to have and be careful of. So these are water mixable oil paints, which should remove a lot of the issues I had when it came to oil painting. I have no idea how they work, but you'll see a little bit later that they do actually work. Then in this very last box, I just got an extra colour as the set didn't come with the black. Now let's move on to trying some of these art supplies out. First, I will swatch out the Artex acrylic markers. So to get straight to the point, these markers are really good. But there are a couple things that I think could be improved. They are juicy, the brush tip is nice, and surprisingly, the colours of the cats match the paint really well. Some match better than others, but overall they are pretty spot on. With these being acrylic markers, I'm not going to test blending them as I think these work best when layering. I'm sure you could blend them to some extent if you were quick enough, but you'll also end up muddying the tips of the markers. And these do dry super fast like you would expect of acrylic. As I swatch these out, you may be able to see some slight patchiness or streakiness, but I don't think that's down to the markers but actually down to the paper that I was using. I'm fairly confident that these will work much better on some proper paper, so keep an eye out for a future video where I use these to create an actual artwork. So the pens themselves felt really good, but the issues I had came down to the colour and number system they have. They seem to have ordered these pens in some sort of numerical order, but I have no clue what the letters mean. And when you compare it to the system that Copic uses, for example, there could be a lot of improvement. For some reason, this set also went from oranges into red and then straight into blues. Then later on went back to the oranges. Just seems like a very odd order for the colours. However, the colours themselves were pretty good and had decent variety. The only thing that I would change is the amount of dark colours, as there just isn't enough of them for me. Another thing that I think is really important to mention are the sets that are available, as this is a bit that really annoyed me. The other small problems I could live with. So this is the 120 set, which is the largest set, however they have many other sets available that have different colours in. However, there is no way of getting every colour possible without getting duplicates, as every set has some duplicate colours in. They even have a 60A and a 60B set, which you would assume that would get you 120 different colours if you bought both sets, but nope. There will be duplicates. So for me, if they are producing more than 120 different colours, you should be able to buy all of them without being forced into buying duplicates. And if you take a look at these images on screen, you can see that there's not just a few duplicates, it's more than half. Now this is especially important when it comes to acrylic markers, because you can't really mix and create new colours. So although 120 colours sounds like a lot, I'm sure that I'll find myself needing more. That's my main issue. It's nothing to do with the pens themselves, so if you don't mind that, I think these pens are decent, but I'll put them to the test properly in a future video. Just to add, these markers are also waterproof when dry, non-toxic and odourless. I did also try and look into the light fastness, but I couldn't find anything. But given that these are acrylic, I'm pretty sure that the light fastness won't be too bad. Light fastness does vary between colours, but overall, acrylic is a light fast medium. I am also going to be using these markers in sketchbooks, so it's not going to affect me all that much. Now let's move on to the water mixable oil paints. So I haven't had much experience with oil paint, but it's very obvious straight off the bat that this is oil paint. I didn't try every colour because there's just no need, and I just wanted to test out how well these mixed with water and how well they blended, which admittedly I didn't do a very good job at. But the first thing I noticed is that these smell exactly like oil paint, so unfortunately you still do have to put up with the smell of these paints. The first two colours came out the tube with a normal consistency, but the black had separated a bit, which is something I remember happening with oil paints when I had them. But when using them, I couldn't tell anything was different with these oils, except that I could straight up use water with them. I have no clue how it works, but it did. So let me just read a bit about these paints. The Winsor & Newton Artisan Water Mixable Oil Colour is a genuine colour made from modified linseed oil and modified safflower oil. I have no clue what they mean by modified, but anyhow. This modification means that Artisan water mixable oil colours can be used without hazardous solvents and can be cleaned up with water. The colour has been formulated to appear and work just like conventional oil colour. The depth of colour, thick consistency, light fastness, opacity and transparency, permanence and drying times are all comparable to conventional oils. This set did come with some linseed oil as well. I'm assuming it's the modified linseed oil, as that also mixed perfectly fine with water. So I tested out the difference between using water and using the linseed oil to thin down the paint, and I couldn't tell a difference. So I'm presuming the use for the linseed oil would be to extend the drying time. For me, these took plenty long enough to dry. They were still wet the next day, so I probably won't ever use the linseed oil. But although these seemed to work perfectly well with water, I did notice something when it came to cleaning the brush. When I cleaned the brush with soap and water, which is already different to how I clean acrylic brushes, as I usually just use water with no soap, but even with the soap, I could feel the oiliness in the brush. I cleaned it the best I could, but when the brush had dried, it was clear that it wasn't fully clean. The bristles had changed completely and weren't anywhere near as soft as they used to be. So if I were to use these paints, I would definitely still need a different set of brushes just for these paints. That is probably my only real issue with these paints. When it came to blending, I probably should have put a bit more effort in, but as bad as my blending was, they felt just like normal oil paints. So I'm confident that these would perform really well if I'd just tried to blend these a little bit more nicely. I also feel like I'm probably using a bit too much water. I'm just so used to acrylic and probably need to watch some videos on oil painting before trying these out properly. I will hopefully try these out on an actual artwork, and when I do, I'm sure it'll be a video, so I'll let you guys know how good these paints really are. But until then, if you have enjoyed watching or found this helpful in any way, please leave a like, comment or subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.